I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead. Welcome everyone, and I want to go ahead and just get rolling here because, like I said, we're only till 4:30 today, and I do want to provide time for conversation if that fits and that makes sense as we go along. But before I start, I just want to do kind of a caveat or talk about how this is different. So, we are Mark and Alejandro and Kathy and I were educational technology trainers and support, and very often the work that we do, we're going to know what to expect. So I know, for example, Alejandro does Excel classes, and we know that he's going to, if he shows you how to put a formula in and you do something with a formula, it's pretty clear what's going to happen on the other side. But a lot of these things that with AI, it's new, it's evolving, and because a lot of the things are generative, we don't know what is going to happen. And so if you thought you were going to come and in 1 hour leave with all the answers and know exactly what's ethical and what's not, and that's probably not going to be the case, but hopefully we'll have a really rich conversation to help you think about it. And here we go. So here's the topics for this session, and I won't even kind of read those to you at all. We'll just dive right into it. This session is titled Digital Citizenship in the Age of AI. So it's worth asking, what do we mean by digital citizenship? If you were to Google it or look it up in some way, there's not one universal answer to what digital citizenship is. And to be honest, I'm not even a huge fan of the term digital citizenship, but I understand what it means. But to me, it sounds very elementary school, but that's my perception. But these 5 categories here for digital citizenship week, those are from Common Sense Media or Common Sense Education. And you'll see at the end, we highly recommend them as a source for resources in education, especially as it pertains to digital citizenship and media literacy and these kinds of things. They do important work very well. They've done a good job for many years. So we're not going to focus on all 5 of these. Media balance, super important topic, because one of the things AI does is it targets us, right? It targets, it knows what we like, and it gives us what we like so that we continue, so that we'll keep watching whatever it is we're watching, and it makes things more addictive, right? And that is, so it is important to understand that, but I'm not going to talk about that very much unless it comes up in this session. Online privacy, we'll talk a little bit about that as far as, online privacy, of course, is a huge important topic, but this session is really going to kind of talk about how digital citizenship is different with AI than it is in kind of without AI, right? Digital footprint, we'll talk a little bit about that as far as it kind of really goes along with privacy and what people know, but we don't know if you use something like ChatGPT and those kinds of things. We don't know where that goes, really. So you want to be, it really goes along with privacy. Now, as I'm saying all this, I feel like I need to kind of stop and make a point here, and that is, these days people are very interested in AI because of generative AI, but generative AI like ChatGPT and these kinds of things. But AI has been around for a while, and AI does things like give your Netflix and your YouTube recommendations and gives you your news feed and all that. We'll get into that shortly. So just want to be clear, we're not just talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. Communication and cyberbullying, that's part of digital citizenship, and a big focus for this session is the media literacy piece, is having the skills to kind of analyze what is delivered through AI, and that includes news. And as you know, if you get your news through Google or Yahoo or many other websites, that news is customized. It is curated for you. So if I subscribe to Google News, and you're signed into your Google News, it's possible that we're going to have extremely different news feeds, and what is the top story for you may not be the top story for me, and so on. So it's important to be aware of that, because kind of the big point of media literacy, I think, is that the media is not objective. It comes from Google, it comes from it's a computer, it's math, it's objective, but it's not. It's not neutral. Let's go on here. So, okay, Mark's got a poll for us. Great. So just poll should have popped up, and just go ahead and think about a number one top priority as far as what you care about here. We're not going to be able to change the presentation. You may not have to.
What did I do?
No, I was just saying that if everybody wanted, if they were interested in something we're not presenting.
I see. Right. Yeah, we're in real trouble.
I think we're going to be all right. Well,
do you have the results to share, or do you want me to just say it out?
Yeah, you can go ahead and share them. I see it on my screen. Do other people see it? I assumed everyone can see it, but yeah.
If you see the results, okay, then you could share.
I do. Yeah. Can everyone see it? Yeah. Yeah, and people can see my screen. So there you go. All right.
I don't see what you're sharing.
You're not sharing.
You don't see my screen?
No, I see your presentation.
You see the slide, but you don't see. Okay, I see. That's interesting. Okay. Well, 44% cheating, 13% privacy, 0% bias. 44% responsibility, and 0% on the two others. So responsibility and cheating are tied for the top honors at 44% each. So, all right.
Which you could kind of say they're one and the same thing. I mean, if you're being responsible, you're not cheating.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I suppose there's lots of different ways to be irresponsible, but we can talk about that.
That's true.
Online, that is.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll.
So next one is another audience participation question. For this one, just start typing things in the chat, and we'll do this for just about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. In the last few days, where have you encountered or interacted with AI? And the way I'm set up, I can't see the chat, so I'm just going to trust once we've got some minutes. So just go ahead and type feverishly if you want to type 10 different things. Let's see if I can see the chat here. Oh, good. So let's see. Law school will be your law school. Google News, Netflix, yeah. It's supposed to say autocomplete here, yeah. Using AI, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the topic of Cooten typed in about using AI in the Marvel movie, and that is the Grammarly is great. I think is the writer's strike still going on? The whole idea of of things being written by AI, and I think you probably saw the story about, I think it was James Earl Jones and others are selling their kind of AI voices. So I guess they record their voices, and then the technology can just generate that voice forever, and they pay the person for the rights to do that, but that might not always be the case. All right. So again, just want to emphasize that that ChatGPT and the things like Midjourney and DALL-E are generative AI, means they create, but we interact with AI all the time. The way YouTube knows which video to recommend, or how Netflix knows which video to recommend. I was going to do a slide, I'll just say it. On Netflix, I don't know if you knew this, not only are the recommendations customized, but the thumbnails for the movies you see are customized. So for the example I use is when I saw this thumbnail for Good Will Hunting, if you remember that movie, mine showed Robin Williams because Netflix knows that I like comedy. Most people will probably see Matt Damon, the star of that movie. So depending on how Netflix kind of see you based on your data, they can even customize not only the movies, but the pictures that you get for that movie. So interesting stuff here. So let's go on. So yes, people right now are most concerned about, even though we want to go and use things in a productive way, but they're really concerned about academic honesty. How do we help students use AI in ethical ways? And how do we still leverage the power of AI while, helping students build their creativity, build the skills we want them to build, and not just have AI do it for them? And the answer is not. So here's something, the academic integrity spectrum. I like the way this sounds. So I think we can all agree that if a student types a paper on a computer and they use a spell checker, using a spell checker, we don't consider that cheating, right? On the other side of the spectrum, if the student goes into ChatGPT and says, write me a 5-paragraph essay about list the causes of the Civil War and how they are affecting us today, and then they just turn that in with their name on it, that's cheating for sure. But in between those extremes, there is a lot of gray area, right? So somebody in the, I think it was Alejandro in the chat, mentioned he uses Grammarly. If you're not familiar with Grammarly, it's kind of a more high-end grammar checker than a conventional spell checker. So if you write something in the passive voice, the class was given by Scott, or Scott led the class, does that kind of stuff. So is that cheating? Well, it depends, right? What about if you do the first thing where you have it right, you have the AI write for you, and then you just go in and change some of the words around? That's probably cheating, right? So we're going to try something here, and maybe Mark, if you can put the link to the form in the chat. So we're going to just do this, and just do this really quickly. Don't take a lot of time with this. So what we've got here is a Google form. Let's see if this is.
What you think?
I'm absolutely fascinated. But on the one, student wrote the whole assignment without consulting the internet. Definitely not cheating. 100% agreement on that one. But on the other ones, notice there's some kind of leaders and all that. But there are differences. Student created multiple AI responses, used the best parts, edited and submitted. One person said probably not cheating. 5 people not sure. 4 said probably cheating, and 3 said definitely cheating. So this is kind of and we can kind of do the same thing with the rest of these, especially where there's a lot of variation. So I think that really says a lot, because when you're saying, okay, here's what's cheating when it comes to AI in my classroom or this classroom, when maybe the teacher right next to you might have a different feeling about how much help is too much. So it's definitely a conversation to be had, right? What is cheating and what is help? And one way you could think of it as having a partner. If you hire a tutor, is that cheating? If your older brother helps you, older sister helps you, is that cheating? So, it's, again, don't have the answers for you right now, but certainly interesting topic. And, we didn't know what you all were going to put, but there is some variation in the answers there. You can see that. So pretty cool.
Scott, we have one request. Sorry to interrupt, but we have one request to maybe make the screen a little bit bigger, if possible.
I'm making the chat bigger.
And I was going to make a comment too, that one thing that makes the conversation difficult is not all of our tools are the same. It's not even the same ChatGPT experience depending on which version I'm using.
Absolutely.
And that's a factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I pay the big money and I have the Chat GPT 4. So this it's really an equity issue in some ways too, just as, you know, people with more money can buy papers, can hire tutors. Um, we don't want these tools to be, don't want this to be an equity issue as well. Okay, we're closing in on 4, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on here. But I think we got the idea of
I just,
the kind of variation cheating. Go ahead and feel free to kind of shout out.
I was just going to say thank you, everybody who participated in that. And I also want to remind you, the chat is open. If you have a comment, there have been some or questions, feel free.
Great, thank you, Mark. So there are, you know, plagiarism checkers, but plagiarism checkers and generative AI, it's a different challenge, because in the past, you know, plagiarism checkers could basically scour the internet and look for exact, you know, chunks of text on specific web pages. But generative AI just, it generates things and you don't know what it's going to create. So it can't, plagiarism checkers for AI, generative AI cannot work the same way. But of course, people are racing, these companies are racing to try to make them work. And one of the things I recently learned is that one of the way these work is they look for something called burstiness. And what burstiness is a score assigned to generally like variation in sentences. So I think at this point, the generative AIs tend to write in kind of similarly complex sentences, maybe similar length and complexity, where most people write with more variation in their writing. So that's one way. So here's some different tools, and you've probably heard of Turnitin. And Turnitin is a paid service, and I know a lot of schools use that one, and they've been, you know, touting their plagiarism checkers. One thing I probably say this more than once is, if you are going to use an AI, whether it's one of these or just put things in a Chat GPT and ask if an AI wrote it, you want to strip out any kind of identifying information for students and probably for yourself. Because like I said, we don't know, you know, we don't know where this is going. So it wouldn't be, you know, wouldn't be right for us to kind of give up students' information to this. So something I want to mention there. For all of the,
Scott, can I clarify? That would include names, identifiable names and information within the writing, not just in the heading.
oh,
Right.
Great point. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Right. It might be right. That's a great point. So in any of these, if you look at the materials for, I think all of these plagiarism checkers, they state, do not rely just on this as saying, okay, this has been written by an AI, or mostly by an AI. One of the big challenges, I think, maybe, you know, for me, it's kind of a deal killer, or false positives. And Turnitin advertises that they have, I think it was 1 to 4% false positives, which sounds, hey, well, that's pretty low. But if you figure, you know, if you have whatever 200 students, I'm not the math teacher, you know, you still have a few false positives. And that's what they advertise, and other research has shown it to be a little bit higher. So, you know, imagine if a student doesn't use AI, but then as a teacher, you say, hey, well, this is, you know, you plagiarize this, and that's not a place you want to be. And kind of along with that whole idea is, to what extent as educators do we want to be the plagiarism police? So I don't think this is really where we want to go. I understand the need to you know, find out who's, you know, having AI write their work for them, but there's other things to think about here. I don't have time to go into it, but UCLA did is kind of compare these different tools, and Turnitin actually did better, but there's even a difference whether they were embedded in an LMS or not. And they did, part of their experiment was they would put in a paper that was not written by AI. And then I think it was the Chat GPT said this was written by an AI. And then if you type in, you can be iterative. If you type in, "Are you sure?" then it would change its mind and say, "Okay, it was not written by an AI." So, they're not 100%. It's not like, with the old style plagiarism checkers, you could go to that web page and verify that that's where that text is from. In this case, there's no way for you to follow up to see if it's right or not. So it makes it a real challenge. So other limitations of plagiarism checkers is, I call it like, if you've heard of like money laundering, it's like text laundering. You could have it, output it through Chat GPT and then run it through. There's one especially for that. I can't think of the name, but you can kind of keep running through that. You can even ask the prompt when you write an essay that is less likely to be caught by AI text detectors. It's not going to catch things in other languages as well as English. They're going to be trained mostly on English. And
question.
Looks like I got the same thing twice there, but accuracy is what I was talking about in the earlier slide. As far as, we don't know if they work or
Scott,
not.
we have a question.
Go ahead.
The question from the
like,
chat is it true that generative AI being used by teachers, lawyers to augment their jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. You can we had a session yesterday called Prompt Engineering, where it kind of showed how you can use generative AI to write lesson plans. I know can help people writing IEPs. In my view, for the most part, they're starting points to help you with organization. They might give you some ideas you didn't have before, but typically you're not going to just be put in the chat, comes out and done. But there are a lot of different, and we're at LACO, we're really focusing on those kinds of things, as how AI can support teaching and learning. As far as eliminating jobs, that remains to be seen. That's, something that I think all of us are thinking about. We know how, technologies have eliminated jobs in the past, and we're kind of speculating now what that's going to look like. But I think what the best we can do is just try to prepare students for this kind of uncertain future.
Thank you, Scott.
I got this. I was talking to a college professor this morning, and we got on the topic, and he shared this with me, Brian Arnold from National University. And this is kind of a tentative conversation when you are suspicious. So I'm obviously not going to read this to you, but I like the beginning. It's not a fault finding mission, but having a conversation with a student of, this is what the plagiarism checker shows. Can you help me understand why it's seeing that? And the student could say, yeah, well, I used it for this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you might end up in one of those gray areas. Well, I wrote it and then I had it rewrite it and use more academic language. Is that cheating? I don't know.
Scott?
Yeah, you can say yes.
I thought after you shared this with me, I thought, well, I could also go to the student and say, I wrote something with ChatGPT with the same prompt, and it's uncannily similar to what you turned in. So help me figure that out. Looks a lot like what you wrote.
Yeah, and I mean, for now, and I use mostly Chat GPT, there's certain kind of patterns that you notice, has a little kind of in conclusion and, a little kind of caveat. Well, this may be, this may apply in some situations, it may not apply in all, and, check your local listings. What, those kinds of things. Yeah, there's some patterns, but yeah, but again, I mean, I'm just thinking, especially if you're a high school teacher and you've got, 200 kids writing essays, how are you going to do that? You're going to have to have these conversations with, dozens of kids. It's going to be a challenge, and no easy answers. But let's talk about some possible ways to minimize cheating. And as I read these and you see these, I understand these are easier said than done, right? Emphasize learning over grades. I was thinking about this about a year or so ago. I took this really fun class. I don't know if any of you know John Carippo. He's an ed tech guru guy, the Edu protocols guy, but he had just a fun class, how to barbecue, how to make steaks and chicken and whatnot. And super fun class. But I thought, if that class were for a grade and I wanted to get an A, it changes your mindset. It's like, oh, I want to make, and I had to take a picture of my, creation. It changes your mindset. So it's hard to, we all strive to have intrinsically motivated students, but we know that the grades are important. So that's a tough one. And yeah, try to reduce the stress of the assignment so they don't feel like they have to cheat. Authentic assignments, that could mean a million different things, of course. But one thing that personally that I like to advocate for is authentic tends to mean, oh, it's real world problems, right? Well, whose real world problems are they? Sometimes they're the teachers. Teacher says, hey, here's a real world problem. But what about if it's possible, depending on everything, if students can come up with the context for their assignments? Transparency about the purpose. Here's what we want. This assignment is for this reason, to see if you understand this, or to see if you can synthesize this information and create something. Okay. Then also probably explicitly focusing on things like, okay, here's what I consider an okay use of ChatGPT. Maybe model it. So if you say, okay, rewrite this sentence to, for clarity, maybe that's not cheating in your mind. But if you say, rewrite it in a more scholarly tone, and it changes all the vocabulary, maybe that's not okay. I'm just coming up with random examples. You'll come up with your own. But and here's another idea, and that is like ramp up assignments, make them harder, and then let students use the AI, and then maybe even have a log of what what happened, what was the prompt, what did it turn out, how did you iterate on that prompt, and those kinds of things, because that's what they're going to be doing in the future a lot of times. I teach this college class where the final student product is creating a district technology plan, and under most circumstances that's a lot of work, right? But I did it with ChatGPT, and 15-20 minutes, you have it write one and then say, okay, expand more about the budget, write more about the training component, write more about the the software, the networking, whatever it is. And with iterating for 10-15 minutes, had a pretty nice little technology plan there. So I'm racking my brain like, now what do we do? And so I'm leaning towards trying to kind of ramp it up, what I just described, saying, okay, you're going to have a few of them and you're going to compare them. You're going to, the AI create a few different technology plans, identify strengths and weaknesses or something like that. But again,
we have a comment.
If teachers are allowed to use Trinidad to have an AI provides tips.
Sorry, before you go into the media literacy, you have a comment from chat. If students use ChatGPT for an assignment, maybe the expectation is they attribute what material they used from it. I think that's kind of what you were just saying, right? That's from IO.
Okay, yeah. But at this time, I mean, ChatGPT doesn't. You can say it came from ChatGPT, but it for the most part, it does not give citations, or it will give. I should mention this if you don't already know, that if you ask it for citations, it will, my experience, I'll say often, just make them up. Just,
I see.
I did that with my schoolwork, and I said, summarize critical media literacy and provide, some good sources for it. And I looked them up. They didn't exist. They were just totally made up. So to think about, but
and then there's one comment from Kip that
I created an essay. Yeah,
you see that if teachers are able to use AI to grade essays and turn it in to assess them or to help assess them, then why couldn't the students use AI to help create them?
I love this idea Kip says about imagine. I'm sure this has already happened where, you know, an AI wrote it, you know, and an AI, different teachers AI graded it, and it, you know, went back, enter in the grade book, and no human no human intervention was involved in that mark in the grade book. And that's an interesting dilemma. And you know, this is all very new, but it seems that the kind of all, you know, changing assessments, because we use writing for so much. We use writing for, you know, when you apply for a job, you create a cover letter, and often you have to submit some kind of writing sample. If you apply for school, it's a writing sample. So we use writing for so much. So it's a really interesting conversation to have about, you know, do we still need people to be really good writers like that? Because I know writing is an indication of good thinking and so on. I'm not here with an answer to that question, but it's certainly one that we need to keep talking about. So, okay, I want to talk about media literacy part of digital citizenship, because AI, you know, people talk about ChatGPT and you know, the generative AIs, and but we got to think about the old school boring ones from 6 months ago that control pretty much every aspect of our lives as far as entertainment, you know, shopping, socializing, everything. There's, you know, AI drives all the technology platforms. So it's important that we're able to do what it says here: access, analyze, evaluate, and create media. So for our students, I think the analyze and evaluate is a focus here. And I would also emphasize creation. So if they can create media, and then they can see what, you know, by creating it, you become better at analyzing and evaluating it, because you know it goes into it, just like with making a video or something like that. Okay. So algorithmic bias, we tend to think of search results from Google as, you know, it's math, it's objective, it's Google, right? You know, there's that saying, you know, if it's not on Google, then it doesn't exist. If you ever heard that, right? But I think my view of media literacy is that, you know, so you think of media, well, what's media? Well, you know, newspapers, advertisements, T-shirts, anything, you know, but now we need to expand it to include algorithmically driven media. So for example, I did for my schoolwork, did a case study with 3rd and 4th graders learning about algorithmic bias. And one of the things that we did is just went on Google image search and typed in CEO, Chief Executive Officer, to see who bosses were. And, you know, students noticed, it's like, well, it's mostly men, and it's mostly white or Asian men. And so is that you know, why do we get those results? Why aren't the results more diverse? Is it in the algorithm? Is it in what's called the training data? So one thing we can do as students is help them understand what training data is. So I don't know if you know the story of the woman in the picture in the bottom right there. There's a documentary on Netflix called Coded Bias, and her name, I can't type and say her name at the same time, Joy Wolaminwi, and she was a student at MIT, doctoral student at MIT, and in computer science, and she had to make a project where, just kind of a fun project. So what she wanted to do is make a project where she looked in the mirror, and then the mirror would then show an image of someone that inspired her. Okay. Well, what she found was that the publicly available facial recognition AI did not recognize her face. And then she says, as kind of half a joke, she put on a white mask, and then it did. So then she delved further and found that the training data used for that facial recognition AI, mostly white and Asian men. Okay, so it turns out that is kind of a common source of algorithmic bias, is incomplete or biased training data. So, wow, that seems like a really hard, complicated thing to understand. But hey, I did some things with 3rd and 4th graders, and they got a pretty good hang of it. Sorry about the bad picture quality here. So there's something called, we don't have that much time, Google Quick Draw. And I'll click it here and I'll put it in the chat, then I'll lose you forever.
I got it, Scott.
You got it? Okay. So Google Quick Draw, it says, draw a shoe. And then you start drawing and it'll say, I see a banana. I see a slide. I see a shoe. Draw a bed. I see a rectangle. I see, and it keeps guessing until you get it, or maybe it doesn't recognize what you draw. So what's neat about this is that you can play this game, but you can also see the training data. So for example, at one time, the Google Quick Draw did not recognize the high heel shoe. Sorry about the image quality there. Because, and then if you look at the training data, you'll see, well, the shoes that people drew, it's pretty rare that anyone drew that shape of a shoe. So that's why it didn't recognize it, just as it didn't recognize the darker skinned woman, because there were zero to few dark skinned women in the training data for the facial recognition thing. So I found in my case study that third and fourth graders could make that connection. And then what they did in that instance is they kind of created a plan for an app, an app to help other people. And they talked about how that they would try to eliminate the algorithmic bias. And some of them were, pretty spot on there with the need for good training data. And another tool that you can use with students to teach this is Google Teachable Machine. And this is I'm not going to play the audio.
Looks like you.
It looks just like me. This is like a 1 minute. The demo would typically take longer. So I made like a 1 minute video. So this is where you create your own training data. So in this example, I'm using Google Teachable Machine, which is free. And so I'm trying to train it. It's a picture of me with glasses on, and I took a bunch of different angles and I take the glasses off. And so this is training data, right? So I've got pictures with glasses, without glasses. I click the button that says training. Takes a couple of seconds there. And now I can use this and I can say, okay, you see at the bottom it says with glasses or without. It's telling me what certainty, okay, that, whether I'm wearing glasses or not. Okay, super simple example, but it's another way for students to really get kind of hands-on with AI. And I think we learn a lot about AI, especially bias, when we see kind of how it goes wrong. So in this little part of the video, you can actually export that into a special version of Scratch, and you can use that kind of AI model as part of another program. So in this case, it's super simple, but the little guy says you're wearing glasses, you're not wearing
Kind of
glasses.
looks like you're at the optometrist trying out some new spectacles.
Yeah, pretty fun. Okay. We are okay. So we've only got about this is working out. So resources, again, common sense education's in big letters there. Big, we're huge fans of that. They have, if you go, they have resources, lesson plans, slides, videos for different grade levels and lots of different topics. It's just if you haven't been there, it's just an absolutely great site for resources for trying to address this. And they're getting, just like everyone, catching up with AI, but there's the general digital citizenship, a ton of that. And now they're starting to integrate more of the digital citizenship as it applies to AI. So, all right. I guess I put a video in there. Very cool. And the Day of AI was something that happened about a month or so ago, where people led teachers in how to do some of these kinds of activities, like I just showed, to teach kids about AI. And I don't know the second to last bullet if you have seen this, but it's worth taking a look at. I don't know if you've all heard of the Khan Academy, but the founder of that, Sal Khan, is piloting something called Khanmigo, which is an AI tutor, and and not only will it guide students through problems and won't just give them the answer, but also and I've not used it, I've just seen the video, it will kind of provide a report to the teacher. You know, this student was on task, this student was messing around, this student just asked for the answers, kind of a thing. So again, I don't know. And the last, well, that's the last thing, but the last bullet on this list, the ISTE AI guides, these are excellent. They have them for different grade levels, and there's one just on ethics. And I did the whole connecting with Quick Draw with Joy, it's called Dr. Joy and the Coded Bias. That came from one of those guides. So
I slipped that one in the middle there, discussion model.
okay.
That's a link to a Google slide. It has a model that I found to be helpful to lead a discussion with students about the ethics regarding different, pick a tool like ChatGPT or something else and discuss what are the advantages, disadvantages to it.
Okay. Oh, look at that. Very nice. Thank you for that. Okay. Excellent. Lots of resources to move on. So we've got looks like about 8 minutes left for our 1 hour session there. And I know last time we did our first session in this AI series yesterday, and I know there was some really good conversations and people have a lot of questions. And so just go ahead, if you have a question or a comment, just go ahead and unmute yourself and we can talk about some things. Again, we don't have all the answers. We're trying to stay ahead of it like everyone else. Better off, Ted.
I think, you did a wonderful job really sharing in a nutshell, just how the fundamental concern, right, is always academic honesty. And so just with this group, we were able to see how we define it in different levels of the spectrum. So I really think it's about demystifying, for the teachers, what it can and can't do and how they can be empowered to use it as teachers for so many processes, time saving and so forth. And also the honest conversations with students. So yes, let's generate this, the 7th grade level, and let's talk about, whatever the topic happens to be. But now let's fact check, let's look at, redundance, let's look at, so even though the writing, it's still, you're really, I guess, looking at, if you're concerned about the writing, as I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? You're really still digging in deeper. So I think it's really empowering teachers to know that this tool is powerful, it's not going away, and how can you turn it around to be effective in your classroom?
Yeah, I agree a lot. You have a lot of really good points there, and one I would kind of build on is the idea of modeling this for students. And like I said at the beginning of this, is usually teachers and trainers, we just have the answers. This is cheating, this is not. But here it's not that clear. And I think even if you model kind of that uncertainty, I just finished I told you I was going to school, and there are times where I was using ChatGPT like Grammarly, but I asked myself, is this, how far would be, is this cheating? Is this cool? And if I ask my teachers, they might not know either. So it's like you said, it's a conversation that we need to have, but we need to have it together because as we saw from that little poll, it's people's opinions vary on how much help is too much help. Great comment. I'm looking in the chat, see if yes, okay, right. Before, in case we run out of time, before the next good question is, do you want to mention that on August 4th of coming up in about a month and a half or so, in person in Downey, we're having a free AI symposium where we're going to talk about a lot of these kinds of issues. To be honest, there will be some focus on the academic dishonesty, but the real focus of kind of our team and this event is these positive, productive uses for teachers, students, educators, and others too, how to use this and how to leverage this. So it's going to be, we've got just an all-star lineup of people, and it's free. So hope to see you there. It's on a Friday in Downey.
It's going to be awesome.
And in the chat, Mark put the registration link. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome. We have we won't delve too much. Any other questions or comments? We've got just a couple minutes left. There is also, we would really appreciate it if you would be, after this session, if you would be so kind as to fill out the workshop evaluation.
I put the link in the chat for that.
You did already, okay. And this one is called, I forgot, not digital citizenship, is it?
Yeah, digital citizenship in the age of AI. So it's digital citizenship in the K-12 classroom.
That's what it's called on here. Okay, good to know.
Then the session is underneath that. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, so then so choose those. Click start evaluation. If you're a LACO person, I believe if you put in your LACO email, then it auto completes the rest of the stuff. So, but yeah, because this is new. So any feedback you give us is very useful. And if you have ideas for other kinds of trainings, workshops, events related to AI in education or other things, we're very happy to get some ideas. So
I should have the presentation and the video ready to share out tomorrow.
Oh,
send it out by email.
Great. And we're on so on the slides we'll have the links to all our social media. Hope you kind of follow us on the LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook, and all that, because we're really kind of expanding into this area of AI in education, and we want to really kind of support people on this journey, because it's not going to be easy, so but I think it will be rewarding.